This is Brian Isaacs with the Fanboy Factor. I'm here with Brian Volk-Weiss, who is the creator of the upcoming History Channel Star Trek documentary called, if I have this right, The Center Seat 55 Years of Star Trek. It's premiering as we're shooting this tonight, November 5th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time. Yeah, Eastern Time. Oh my God. Thanks for joining me, Brian. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, man. Good to be back.
As we've had several conversations, and I tell from the background, I know you're a huge Star Trek fan, so this must have truly been a labor of love for you. 10 episodes. I've seen the first one. Pretty great stuff. And the way you attack it it's very, you do it a very relaxed way. I loved the focus on, Lucille Ball and how she, with the syndication stuff. It was the first episode is great and definitely left me wanting more.
Thank you, man. Very kind of you to say.
I do have to ask, in watching it, you did I love how you talked about, George Takei, and, at the time people were still like not feeling so great about the Japanese and the Cold War going on with, Chekhov and Walter Kanan. And I'm not trying to, I'm watching them like, my God, he didn't talk anything about Scotty. Was there like no time, or did I blink and miss it? I gotta know.
So that's a great question. I have not been asked that before. So there's a bunch of answers. One is, we get less than an hour. We can't put there's no Gene Coon. There's there's a lot of people that should be in there that aren't in there. James Doohan, to be honest with you, if I was doing a 2-hour episode, everybody would be in it.
Right.
But Doohan, you got the story about him losing fingers at Normandy, a lot of that stuff. And the other thing about Doohan is he notoriously had a pretty complicated relationship with Shatner. You just, a lot of those stories have been told before.
Right.
So I really made this show, on a scale of 1 to 10 of Trekkie, believe it or not, I only consider myself a 7.5.
Mm-hmm.
I really made this show for 5 through 9s.
I can see that.
It's, if you're a 10, you're probably going to know everything. Though that might not be true, because Mary Jo and John Tenuto, I consider to be the biggest experts in all of Star Trek. And they have seen the first episode, and they said not only were there no mistakes, but they learned new things. So I take it back, because they are absolutely 10s. So I guess I made it for 5 through 10s, but it's not really for 10s. It's really for 5 through 9s.
I gotta tell you, it's the way it's portrayed. It definitely goes lower than that, because it's really almost a 101 on how this entire concept came together and how it was all put together. And I really found the entire thing interesting, from the business strategies to coming up with the crews. I cracked up about the Larry Niven section. That was I know Star Trek. I don't know all these stories, so hearing that it really cracked me up there. And it's very interesting how you do go deep, but you don't go so deep that somebody with just a passing knowledge won't get it.
I'm so grateful to hear you say that, because I'll tell you what we try to do. When we were doing the first season of Toys That Made Us,
right?
We had this great executive named Nat at Netflix, and we turned in, I kid you not, a 3-hour first cut. And I knew it wasn't going to be 3 hours, but I thought it'd be 2 hours.
Right.
So when Nat sent his notes, he said, "This is great, love it. You got to get it under an hour." And I'm like, "Nat, like, what are you talking about? Like, 2 hours maybe, but how on earth could I do Star Wars toys in under 2 hours, let alone under an hour?" I never forget this. We talk about this all the time, and that was like 5 years ago. He said, because I said to him, I go, "Nat, give me even an example. I can't even think of anything to cut. What's an example of what I can cut?" And in that cut, I always say we had a 5-minute section. It was actually almost 7 minutes. We had a 7-minute section about the most obscure Star Wars figure that ever went into production. It was this character named Vlix that only went up for sale in Brazil. So Nat's response to me saying, "What could we cut?" I couldn't cut anything. How could I possibly get this under an hour? He goes, "I don't know, Brian. Maybe you don't need 7 minutes on Vlix." I'm like, huh. And then here's the thing he said that changed everything we do. He said, "Brian, you're a big Star Wars fan, right?" I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Is your wife a big Star Wars fan?" I go, "No, she's not." He goes, "Well, here's the challenge you got to live up to. You need to make a show that works for you, but that your wife doesn't keep getting up to go make tea." He's British. That's why I said tea. He's British. But that's what we try to do. So to your point, I love what you said, because that's exactly what we try to do. We try to make it work for people like me that love Star Trek, but I also tried to make it so my wife will like it.
You know, I ended up watching with my wife, watching the copy, and she enjoyed it too. It's just she knows she knows of Star Trek. That's about it. But the way you told the story, it really captivated her, and she wanted to watch more of it. So she's definitely down with watching the entire series. So
now, wait a minute though. Was it your wife who was like, "Where the fuck is Scotty"?
No, it was me.
Okay.
Gates McFadden does a great job narrating it. How did you get her on the project? I gotta ask.
It's the circle of life, man. One of my best friends used to be an agent, who's, by the way, not only a producer now, but it was the executive producer of Center Seat. But like 4 or 5 years ago, he was an agent, and he represented Gates as an actor.
Whoa.
So a year ago, we launched a podcast division, and I asked him if he would introduce me to Gates to see if she would do a podcast. She agreed to do the podcast. It's called Investigates. See what she did there? And she, it was great. The relationship couldn't have been better. So when Center Seat got greenlit, it just hit me like, I've never made anything where I had somebody who was actually there as an executive producer.
Right.
So I called her up and I was like, "Hey, we're doing this series all about the 55 years of Star Trek. Why don't you be an executive producer?" And she was like, "Well, what do I have to do?" And I'm like, "To be honest with you, all you got to do is watch rough cuts and give us your notes." She was like, "Okay." That's all the contract said. It was literally, the contract was a list of all the things I had to do for her. And there was like almost nothing in the contract as to what she had to do for the show. She took it upon herself not only to give notes on every cut, but we wouldn't have Brett Spiner without her. We wouldn't have Kate Mulgrew without her. We wouldn't have Rick Berman without her, and a lot of other people too. So then the thing I hate, and the only thing I don't like about directing, is picking the voiceover. And I never procrastinate about anything in my life except picking the VO. So I pushed it as far as I could. Our president of production told me, Brian, you got to make a decision this week or we're going to start to have overages. And I just thought, God, Gates has a great voice. Maybe she'll do it. And thank God she said yes.
She does have a great voice. It's just very easy to listen to her. You could hear the enthusiasm in her voice as she's talking about all this stuff. And she does a great job just narrating this entire documentary. I really enjoyed it.
You're very kind, man.
I don't lie. Now it's 10 episodes on a weekly basis, I'm assuming, because in this age of streaming, I'm assuming it's going to be a new episode every week.
Yes, correct.
Okay. And
so I should preface it or asterisk it by saying, really, the answer to your question is anybody wondering when and where it's airing, ask History Channel. That's my official answer. But yes, I think it's one a week.
Now, when it comes to like doing a documentary of this type of nature, the investigative stuff that goes into the script, I mean, you had to, like, obviously you probably had to search for stories, news clippings, old interviews and things like that. I mean, how do you go about finding all this, as a documentary maker?
The short answer is we actually do about 4 months of research before we start shooting. And a part of the research is for almost everybody we interview except for talent, big talent, even
right.
to small talent will do this. We pre-interview everybody twice. So we basically, while we're pre-interviewing, hear stories, and then we start researching certain stories that we find interesting. And then while doing that, if somebody tells a story like, and there I was, and I opened the closet and I found the prop phaser that was crushed during the Space Seed episode, then this is a made up example.
Right.
Then we will track down to the best of our abilities where that smashed phaser is. Hopefully we'll find it. And then hopefully whoever owns it will let us film it. And then that's how we do it.
When you're doing all this research, I mean, do you have to stop yourself from kind of like going down the rabbit hole and going off track and just
every minute of every day? The best way to answer that question is when Toys That Made Us was greenlit, I had 0.0 interest in He-Man. I didn't like He-Man. I didn't understand He-Man. I did not own a single He-Man anything. Cut to today, right over there. I have a 4 foot long, 2 foot deep shelf with dozens of He-Man on it. So that is the and She-Ra, everything. I went crazy. So you really, when you make shows like this, I'm barely joking. It is the occupational hazard of making a show like this.
It's very cool. It's, like I said, I truly enjoyed it. I can't wait to see the next couple episodes. I love the tease for episode 2. That was very entertaining.
Thank you.
But it's just, like I said, the most fascinating thing to me is just how, Desilu Productions stepped up, got this syndication deal, and it was ahead of its time, and they saw where it was going and they knew what to do, which I thought was just pretty, incredible to do.
I don't mean to split hairs, but this has been a bee in my bonnet since I was probably 13 or 14. Desilu didn't step up. Lucille Ball stepped up.
No, okay.
Sorry. that's something that's driven me crazy since I was a kid, because if you're a Trekkie like me, you've read every book about the making of Star Trek, and you've seen
Right.
every documentary about the making of Star Trek. A really strange thing that I've never seen in any other thing about any other IP is the books are much more candid than the documentaries usually. Right. I do give a lot of credit to Rod Roddenberry's doc. I mean, that was as blunt as a doc can be. And I did like Shatner's doc, shockingly, actually, about the beginning of Next Generation. So one of the things that I set out to do with the whole series, there were a bunch of things I wanted to do. And on the top of that list was giving Lucille Ball the credit. If you read the books, it's very clear that Gene Roddenberry is the father of Star Trek and right. Lucille Ball is the mother of Star Trek. If you watch most documentaries, they usually don't mention Lucille Ball, but if they mention her, it's like an offhanded thing.
Yeah, it's very like I've seen other ones where they do gloss over it, and that's why I really like the amount of detail you just went in about. It seemed like a serious passion project for Lucille Ball, and it was incredible. It just, the Golden Girl of Hollywood herself, one of the top comedians at the time, is just, and of course, being a woman in this industry, being able to have the power to do something like this is just, it's pretty much unheard of.
There was no woman in the business at that time that had the job she did.
Yeah, it's just, and that's why I think that's how you started with her and just getting into it. And then as you started with her history, moving it into the Star Trek history, it really captivated me. It sucked me in. I'm watching it. I don't even realize, next thing I know, I'm like, the episode's over and I'm like, okay, I need another episode.
That's the greatest compliment you could give to a director. So thank you, man. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me for a few minutes. Really can't wait to see the rest of the series. And it is called Center Seat.
Sorry.
Center Seat.
Pure line from Star Trek 1 was Center Seat.
Center Seat, 55 years of Star Trek, airing on the History Channel starting tonight, which is November 5th at 10 p.m. Eastern Time.
That's
Brian,
right.
Thank you so much for speaking to me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, man. Have a great night.
You too.
Bye.